If you haven't explored your sexuality with awareness, how do you expect to experience cosmic orgasm? It's not going to happen. You need to explore the roots, the mud, before you can grow your lotus of consciousness.
What do you think are 3 of the tools that help people the most to shift from everyday sexuality, like default sexuality, into a more tantric experience?
I'm Layla Martin. I'm your host of This Tantric Life. This podcast is for you to learn about and be able to use the incredibly powerful system of Tantra in your life. I have been teaching and studying classical and neo-Tantra for over 20 years. And when you apply that to sex, love, and relationships, as I love to do, you end up having conscious relationships, the deepest, most epic and magical sex, and the kind of intimacy that you get to be grateful for on your deathbed.
Hi, and welcome to This Tantric Life. I'm your host, Layla Martin. We're coming in hot today with Enlightened Tantra Master, Ma Ananda Sarita. She is one of my most cherished lineage teachers. I found her over 10 years ago, and she to this day is one of my #1 responses when people say, where can I learn Tantra? Because the way that she transmits the wisdom is so safe, so beautiful, and so sacred. She came to the Master Osho at the age of 17 and worked deeply within his lineage for 26 years. She's worked with enlightened masters all over the globe, and she is a potent transmitter of the Osho lineage and many other wisdom traditions. She's also one of the most powerful healers I have ever come across. I had one of the most powerful releases of my sexual abuse trauma through a past life healing that she did with me. I recommend her so deeply and so highly. So she holds workshops all over the world. She's also the author of 2 books, Divine Sexuality and Tantra Alchemy. I also want to share with you that I just completed, again, the level 1 of her soulmate training here in Bali. And we're recording this episode today because this is the only day that I could get her in person anytime soon. And during the whole entire level 1 of the soulmate, I had some of the worst food poisoning of my entire life. I've only canceled 2 classes of teaching in 10 years online, and I had to cancel a class because I was so sick. So it's been cycling, this diarrhea and vomiting. So I come to you in a somewhat ratchet state of like, I couldn't get my nails done, couldn't find my hairbrush, we got no extensions going on. I'm literally sweating. And then yesterday, because I finally broke down with my friends, you all know me, I don't actually drink alcohol. I haven't drank alcohol in like 16 years. I had like 2 glasses of wine yesterday because I was just at the end of my rope. So as I'm about to interview one of my favorite all-time spiritual teachers and tantric masters, I also have just a tinge of hangover along with my general ratchet attitude. So please enjoy the beauty and majesty of this interview coming to you hot in my full human state. Sarita, oh my God, I'm so happy you're here with us today.
So delighted to be here with you.
Yay! So you grew up in Southern California. You left home at age 15. You went on a spiritual journey.
Yes.
And you came across Osho in India at age 17. How did that happen? And what was that like? Because there's a lot of misunderstanding around Osho. Can you tell me, what was it like to encounter him? What was it like to experience him as a master?
I'll just say a little bit about that leaving home at 15.
Yeah.
And, you know, years later, I asked my mom, why did you allow me to leave home at 15 and hitchhike throughout the entire world all the way to India? And she gave me a very surprising answer. She said, when you were in my womb, I dreamed that I was carrying a butterfly. I had a dream, like a prophetic dream. And when the butterfly was born, it flew to the other side of the world, found paradise, and invited me to come. So she said, I knew you would leave home early. I knew you would travel. I knew that you would find paradise and that I would be benefited. So I allowed you to go. And I found that really amazing, that this mother's trust. And she even went to a notary and got a notarized letter saying that I have her blessing, her permission to travel. That helped me to get through borders because I was underage.
Wow.
You know, and it was very, And why did I go? Well, basically, I wanted to find the essence of life, and nothing was more important than that. And I wasn't finding it where I was, so I just thought I have to travel till I find it. And that's how I made my way slowly but surely to India. When I first set foot in India, I discovered Vipassana meditation through Goenka. So I was at a 10-day retreat in Bodh Gaya learning Vipassana. It felt like a homecoming. And then I heard that Goenka would teach another month-long silent retreat in Mumbai. So I went there. And the night before that month-long retreat, I met Osho. It was through a friend who was, like I hadn't met him before. I met him at a backpacker hotel. And he said, I'm going to meet a very interesting man tonight. Maybe you would like to come. So I was always up for an adventure. I went. There was an apartment in Mumbai. All the walls were lined with books. And everybody was sitting there. There was about 30 people sitting wearing orange robes. They were all sitting in silence. So I just sat in silence, not knowing what to expect. And then this most unique being floated into the room. It literally appeared that he was floating. He was walking so gracefully. He sat down in an easy chair and he started giving a discourse on the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra. So this was my first peek into Tantra. I still remember the sutra he was commenting on. While engaged in sexual union, stay attentive on the fire in the beginning, and so continuing, avoid the embers in the end. He gave a 1.5-hour discourse on this sutra. That discourse blew my mind completely. He gave glimpses into a kind of sexuality that I had never even dreamed was possible. A kind of sexuality that links our physical body with our heart, with our spirit. A sexuality infused with meditation. So it was like I was on a launch pad and I just took off into outer space in that moment. And after the discourse, we were all lined up against the wall and he was passing by to go to his bedroom. And he namaste'd and looked into the eyes of each person. He stood in front of me for a long time looking into my eyes. Something happened, something magical, a transmission beyond words, soul to soul communion. After that, this same person who had brought me there said, oh, but you can't miss tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. on the Chowpatty beach in Mumbai. There's going to be a special meditation, so you need to come for that. I said, okay. And then he said, and at 8 a.m., Osho, at that time he was known as Bhagwan, Bhagwan will appear and he's going to do Shaktipat. And I said, but I have my month-long retreat. He said, it's okay. It will end by 9 a.m. and then you can go to your retreat, which starts at 10 a.m., so no worries. So the next morning, I went for the dynamic meditation.
Wow.
On the beach. That was my first introduction. I loved it. I felt like I had been searching for that my entire life because I had a theory that we all have madness inside. That's very obvious if you look at family dynamics, etc. There is a quality of madness that comes out in people.
Yeah.
So how can we move through the madness to the other side where our innate, unique nature must be hiding? So I had this belief. And I was also very much into dancing. So the dynamic meditation, it has the phase of breathing, and then you have the phase of madness with method, where you go completely bonkers, conscious emotional release. And then it has the phase of raising the kundalini through the jumping and the who. Then it has a phase of deep silence and a phase of celebration through dance. So this was a meditation made for me, like custom designed. I loved it. Then Osho appeared after that and gave this most incredible Shaktipat transmission. This is where I really saw or encountered the majesty of Osho, because he was standing there in his divine masculine, very, very powerful, but simultaneously in his feminine, in his compassion and love. I had never seen a being full of so much love and compassion. The instruction for the meditation was, take a marigold flower, pour your ego into the marigold flower, and offer it to golden images of Osho's feet. When I did that, thunderbolt of energy came through my whole body. Then Osho asked us to give him all of our suffering, to look into his eyes and just pour our suffering to him. And he stood there like this and just took everybody's suffering. There was about 100 people, everybody screaming, howling, crying, giving him lifetimes of anguish. And he just took it. And I was thinking, who does that? There was no charge for that meditation. Like, who just invites everybody to give their anguish to them? And after about 20 minutes of releasing the anguish, he then invited us to lay down and receive love and bliss, and to feel the divine moving within, to feel the bliss which is our true nature. So this is, I'm telling this story because it really gives a glimpse into Osho and what he was doing his whole life, and what every enlightened being does. They receive the suffering of people, they give back love. This is basically what enlightened beings do. I've met a few of them, and they all do that, each in their own way. So after that, I did my month-long vipassana in silence, and then I went to Osho's meditation camp, and there I was initiated. And he gave me the name Ma Ananda Sarita. Ma, he explained, means mother of the universe. Ananda means bliss. Sarita means river, river of bliss. And he said, if you continue with meditation, you will become this. So from that moment, I stayed in his community for 26 years. He was in his body for the first 17 years of that 26 years. So I was really in his physical presence for 17 years. And through that process, radical, incredible transformation happened. And wow, it's my great honor and joy to transmit from his lineage to people. Of course, I've experienced my own transformation. I'm not just offering like a puppet, or copy-paste of Osho. It's not like that. I've been on my own journey, grown, evolved, transformed. So in deep devotion and honor to him, while also honoring my own unique flowering, you could say, I offer all of that to others.
I'm here to let you know that if you want to stay connected to my teachings and if you want to support this podcast, the best way to do it is to sign up for my email list. Email list sounds old school, and yet it is where I share my most intimate teachings, the path, process, heartbreak, and triumph of my life, and so much of the content that I make for you on a regular basis. So the way you get on the email list is by heading over to laylamartin.com, put your email address into any of the boxes. You can also sign up for cool practices like sex magic or energy orgasm, totally free. Heading on over to laylamartin.com, signing up with your email address. This supports the podcast. It supports this entire work and is the number one way for you to receive the highest teachings of this path.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about what made Osho such a genius, right? Because if you don't know anything about Osho and you just see him in the robes and all the followers bowing down, it's easy for your mind just to be like, psycho on a guru trip, right? If you watch Wild Wild Country, it's easy to be like, those people are fucking nuts, right? Like, who does that, right? And similar to, let's say, plant medicine, where if you've never tried plant medicine, your mind can just be like druggies and like spiritual bypassing, right? And then let's say you take LSD or ayahuasca and you touch the river of sacredness, you touch the mystical truth of those experiences, right? And some people are terrible shamans out there. Some people have bad trips. But you can't question the majesty that is available if you really connect to those experiences, right? The same with any spiritual practice. So what I found with Osho, because I started encountering Osho sannyasins when I was 18. I actually did my first dynamic meditation, Kundalini, when I was 18. Wow. And so it started to break me open. And it was really your transmission of Osho's magic, because you were a medium for Osho, which I would love for us to talk about that and discuss that and the little light switch in the ashram, because that's so fabulous to hear. But I did Osho practices for 10 years, and I heard about the distortions that happened with Sheila, and I was always a little like, okay, I love the meditations, and I have some questions, right? Like any good person, you want to ask your questions, do your research. And when I received sannyas from you, right, which is in a way to accept this different way of living. In fact, you could really quick, what is it to take sannyas in the Osho lineage?
Sannyas is a love affair. That's the first thing. It's for people that really feel drawn to Osho and would love to be closer to his vibration. You could say it like that. They love his books, they love his methods, so they just want to come closer and to experience being to being resonance. And another part about it is that you are ready to have a discontinuity from your past and to go on a journey towards your true essence. And in order to go on that journey, you are acknowledging that you need to use methods of meditation. So you're committing to doing some kind of meditation practice to work on yourself. And of course, when people are aligned with Osho, they like to do his methods. But he is an amazing master who has opened the doors to many other masters, many other methods that have existed down the ages. In fact, he's given a whole version of history, an enlightened version of history according to enlightened beings who have walked their talk, who have given out of compassion multiple methods to humanity. So he's spoken on many, many, many different masters, many methods. So when we jump on the path and start practicing Osho's methods, we simultaneously open to many other methods. I always remember a saying of Buddha, truth is that which works. So whatever works to help the person awaken. And it's basically that you're dedicated to your own spiritual awakening. And Osho used to give a new version of sannyas, because the old version is you renounce the world, you go into the Himalayas somewhere with your begging bowl, and you live completely isolated from the world. And Osho used to say that this is a cowardly act, because the real spirituality happens when you are in the world, but not of the world, where you can learn to become a witnessing consciousness even in the midst of daily life. And I always remember one statement he made, that actually what people are renouncing when they renounce is women. They're afraid of the feminine, because the feminine brings with it emotions and also sexuality. So these two things create fear and trembling in the masculine, and they don't know how to handle it, and they don't know how to balance emotions with spirituality. So they just cut off and then go isolated into some cave or whatever, and that this is a cowardly act. And I believe this is true. Osho is a modern day Tantra master, because many of his teachings are very, very tantric. Even though he's also spoken very much on Sufism, on Zen, on many different kinds of traditions, and honored those traditions. But the nature of his community was entirely tantric, actually. And that tantric element is best described as no mud, no lotus. This is a tantric saying, which I know you're aware of. The roots of the lotus flower are in the mud at the bottom of the lake. This represents our instinctual nature, our sexuality. The stem of the lotus grows up through the water, symbolized by our chakra system, flowers at the crown chakra as a 1,000-petaled lotus. So this 1,000-petaled lotus represents awakened consciousness or universal consciousness. And that saying, no mud, no lotus, it means if you haven't explored your sexuality with awareness, how do you expect to experience cosmic orgasm? It's not going to happen. You need to explore the roots, the mud, before you can grow your lotus of consciousness. And this is very basic to his community, his teaching, that we need to bring awareness into all that we are. So therefore, he coined the word neo-sannyas. It means a new version of sannyas.
I created this mastermind for couples because it is the experience that I wanted for me and my beloved. I was like, where can we learn Tantra together? Where can we become masterful at sacred sexuality together? And beyond that, where can we get the same education in how to communicate at a ninja level, and how to create emotional safety for one another, and on how to heal on the deepest levels whatever wounds keep us from staying in love over a lifetime. That's why I made this mastermind. It is going to be super fun because you get to go on the sexual adventure of a lifetime. I'm talking majestic European castles, beautiful nature experiences where you will be trained step by step in how to create erotic rituals and how to make love in an energetic and advanced spiritual way. It is You'll also get 6 months of in-person classes on relational skills and tools, and also erotic mastery. Everything from how to touch each other in the most exquisitely sensual way, to how to have the most incredible energy orgasms together, to just how to say difficult things in a deeply loving way. You are going to get the advanced relationship training of a lifetime. If this is something you're interested in, you can go ahead and check it out at laylamartin.com/tantric mastermind.
So some of the teachings of Osho that really spoke to me, that made me feel like, oh, this is a path for me, this is a teacher for me, are, number one, you've sort of alluded to it, but he basically said, you Westerners, I mean anyone, but he was talking to Westerners, are too fucked up psychologically to fucking meditate. Right? And if you try and sit on a pillow, right, you're going to have all these sexual urges and all your unhealed childhood pain and all your crazy is just going to be like, zzz, right? Yeah. And so you're either going to turn into like a very repressed spiritual person who's basically like, God is only in like fasting and silence and like, how dare you fuck, you know, like, and like, I won't go to parties or whatever, right? Because you're just like, zzz, like keep it down, like pack it in, right? Or you just can't meditate. You're going to actually like just be sitting there and like your mind's going to be going and going and going. So I loved his genius of saying, go into all of your messed upness, dive into your psychology, dive into your sexual desire. In fact, go fuck until you get over all your egoic hangups, right? Like stop making yourself so wrong and trying to get to God by being not human. It was almost like my understanding was like, go so deep into your humanity and express it so much, right? And that's what dynamic meditation and some of his other methods gave people, this safe container to unwind, to feel all of your emotions, to express your sexuality, to be in yourself. And once you did that unwinding, then you could sit on the meditation cushion and know real stillness. And that spoke to me because actually similar to you, I did a Vipassana meditation, like right after I turned 19. So I counted a little bit of Osho, went and did a bunch of Vipassana. And like, I was sitting there like literally like 19, like light bodying in Vipassana and like sitting there in stillness. And like, we had a very hot monk. He was some like British monk that was like helping with the like Vipassana in Thailand. And I was just like wanted to rip his monk clothes off and have so much sex with him. And I was like this 19-year-old just like, oh my God, you know? And I got out of Vipassana and I wanted to drink alcohol and go to the club. And I was like, what is this? Like, no, I'm supposed to be spiritual. And then when I reconnected to Osho's teachings, I was like, oh, I can actually be spiritual by learning to meditate and bring awareness to my life, as opposed to trying to control my life and make it rigid or make it fit some idea of spirituality. So that really spoke to me. And then there's this other thing that you say a lot that I'm sure came from Osho, which is to be total. Yes. Right? It's a path of spirituality, of being total in your experience. So that can be total in your business, be total in your dharma, be total in your juice fast, be total in crying in the fetal position, be total in your marriage, be total as a mother, right? And so it's this life affirming path to spirit rather than life denying. Because to be total means whatever you do it 1000%, right? Bring the fullness of your being into it and trust that that totality takes you to truth, right? So these teachings helped me get over any of my stories I had about Osho, to recognize the genius that was there, right? And to start engaging with it.
And the compassion, because that's true compassion. Otherwise, what master tells you this, that it's okay to go into your emotions, it's okay to go into your sexuality. Now the difference that makes all the difference, and this is very important, he would give this incredible permissiveness, but always in the context of meditation. Always bring it back to silence, to stillness, to going within. So even his meditations where you're doing a lot of activity, maybe you're doing gibberish or you going crazy beating pillows or whatever it is, there will always be a phase where you go into deep stillness, deep silence. And this is what is missing in many other modalities who use emotional release, but there's no meditation in it. It's not going to have the same effect. It's really important to understand that even though there was a lot of wild and crazy things happening in his community, it was always held in the context of meditation. And that's where the jewel is delivered.
And so what exactly, like, let's say you did this kind of experience, right? Dynamic, feeling all of your emotions, feeling your sexual turn on, and then you sat down at the end. When you say bringing meditation into it, what exactly are you doing in that process?
It means basically bringing meditation in means that every day there's some phase of silence and going within into a no mind space. So whether that is a whole meditation, I'll just describe a very short meditation that everybody can do. That's very easy. That say you have anger arising in your life. Maybe you are a person who has cyclical anger, or you have anger attacks, or sometimes you shout at your lover, but you know that doesn't feel very good to do that, to dump anger on your children, etc. So you can do this very short meditation. It only takes 8 minutes. It's the Osho pillow beating meditation. And this is absolutely incredible. You simply put your hands like this or this. You have a big fat cushion. You beat the cushion and you say no for approximately 3 minutes, minimum 10 times. And then you sit in front of your cushion like a Buddha, eyes closed, awareness within, becoming a witness of your body, mind, and emotions for 5 minutes. And then you bow to your cushion. And you do that every day for 10 days. And that's going to purge the cyclical anger that's there. It will purge the anger that's been carried maybe the whole life. It's absolutely incredible. But likewise, you can just use it anytime in the family where anger is arising. Instead of dumping it on the other, you have your family huge red cushion or whatever that everybody knows, okay, when there's anger, we just go and do the pillow beating meditation. And that will create sanity in your familial field. So your field is not burdened by people fighting with each other, dumping shit on each other unnecessarily. So this was a radical, compassionate act that Osho did to offer these kinds of meditations to people, that you can literally bring meditation into the regular human daily life. Wow.
Right, which is one of the fundamental transmissions of Tantra, right?
Yes,
like
exactly.
What is it to live your life and meditate on it?
Yes.
Versus, I think, for many of us, and especially if you grew up in a Judeo-Christian tradition, spirituality is equated with controlling yourself, right? Spirituality is equated almost with like, how much can you control yourself in alignment with what people told you God wants you to do?
Yes.
And that's what makes you spiritual or not, versus how present can you be with what is, And that is the expression of spirituality.
That's basically what Tantra is, bringing a loving awareness to any action that you're doing in life, whatever it is. It could be walking, it could be drinking a cup of tea, it could be looking at a sunset, it could be playing with your child, and it might be making love. So whatever you are just doing as a regular person, you can bring loving awareness to it, and that will become a portal into deep spiritual states. This is the secret of Tantra, actually.
Anything can be the portal. So, you know, in working with people that you can say a million times, Tantra is about so much more than sex. And everyone's like, yeah, but how do I have tantric sex like that? Like, you know, that's what most people really want to know. So could you share, what is tantric sex? And how do people, what are some tools or techniques that people can use to start to shift everyday kind of default sex into more tantric sex?
So basically, tantric sex means that you're applying a loving awareness into the sexual act. There also may be a ritualistic aspect. There's an honoring, a basic honoring of what it is to be a divine masculine, what it is to be a divine feminine. There also may be elements where you are going into a levitated space where you see the inner goddess in your partner or the inner god in your partner. And so you might create a ritualistic space, you will do some honoring, you'll do an opening ritual, you consecrate the space, and then you will typically do a meditation practice which will bring you in tune with each other. You want to tune your energies. It's like tuning a musical instrument. You have to get the instrument in tune before you play the music. So there will be a phase of doing some kind of practice together. And then once you go into the sexual union, you're also bringing a very clear meditative consciousness into that act. Now, basically, sexual union is God in action. This is how new life gets created. It's a sacred act. So to bring awareness to that, it will be revealed in its divine aspect. If we just go into unconsciousness and our instinctual nature, there's a tendency perhaps to go into a downward spiral where we're just acting on instinct alone. But if you bring a meditative awareness, there will be a tendency to go on an inward and upward movement of your energy, which leads to spiritual transformation. So this is where you can truly experience the phenomena of the soulmate, where all your 7 chakras are aligned, you're opening into divine spiritual states. And this is not just woo-woo. The fact is, we have a sexual center in our brain. This is the glandular system that rules over our sexual response. So when we have some kind of activity here at the genital region, it is linked to the glandular system, but we're not always aware of that. Now, when somebody is going into very profound, deep, full-body orgasmic states, it can happen that there is even DMT release. DMT is a naturally occurring drug within our own bodies that typically gets released at the time of birth for both mother and child, if it's a natural birth, gets released at the time of death also, gets released in deep and profound states of orgasm, and also for some people in very deep states of meditation. So this DMT release can happen while we're having sex. And this leads us into the cosmic orgasm, where we start having visions of God and other, alternate realities and all psychedelic colors and whatever. Sometimes people have that happen by accident, and then they dream about it for 30 years. Oh, how did that happen? I want to have that experience again. How is it possible? Now, Tantra is a science where you can easily reproduce and tap into those kind of states through different kinds of methodologies.
Yeah. And what I love about you is how deep you will train people in these practices. So you have something called the soulmate training, which I love, which I tell every couple to go to if they can. And it's a 4-year training if you do the whole thing. 4 years minimum, right? Yeah. And you do 2 levels every year. You've got lots of homework in between where you have to fuck each other ritualistically, which sometimes is a joy, and sometimes you're like, oh God, just stick it in, and you're just gonna make it count. You're just like, okay, I barely earned that, but technically I earned it. Sometimes I'm like Tantric hero, like crushing my homework. So in that, right, one of the reasons why when people say, like, what is Tantric sex, it can be so hard to fully tell people, because you're like, well, you can study for 20 years and still be learning. You can do 4 years as a couple and be tasting the nectar, right? In the retreat I was just in with you, all the couples were having their minds blown. And so many of them had done years, if not decades of work, right? Of plant medicine, of spirituality, of therapy, of all these modalities, right? And they were still like, wow, like this is possible. Like you can fall in love this much. You can have these experiences. Like this is so sacred and so holy. That was just 1 week of experience. And you can go years and still be learning and still be growing and still be exploring. So it can be hard to really tell people what it can be, because it is such a deep practice. It is such a deep initiation of the nervous system and the spirit. But what do you think are 3 of the tools that help people the most to shift from everyday sexuality, like default sexuality, into a more tantric experience?
One thing that's important is to understand that Tantra is a science. We're working through the chakra system. It is a very elegant map to understand our whole physiology and our spirituality and how that blends, etc. It's also very important to understand the biological differences between male and female, to honor those and to bring intelligence into that contradictory element that is there between the male and the female. And so I always like to remind people, yes, men are wired like this, women are wired like that. Now let's bring our intelligence to it. Tantra will always take what is a fact and simply bring a meditative awareness to it, like the Khajuraho meditation, where, it's a fact that men would like to see women's body parts. This is wired into the male brain to need to see various woman body parts at regular intervals throughout the day.
The straight or bisexual male brain.
Yes, exactly. And that activates, testosterone. It boosts the testosterone.
Yeah.
And women are wired to wish to be seen. We want to be seen. That's why billions of all kind of currencies are spent on beauty products, etc.
Yeah.
Because a woman desires to be seen and recognized as a woman.
Yeah.
So we take this facticity.
Yeah.
We make a beautiful meditation out of it.
Well, we can, or we can get all weird about it, right? Because women are like, don't objectify me. And men are like, oh, I can't stop looking at all these gorgeous women. Like we could get all in our heads about this, rather than being like, of course, I love to be seen as beautiful, right? Like if I'm really honest with myself, yes, I want to be seen. I want to be celebrated. I don't want to be dehumanized.
So when you bring a meditative awareness to that, it is incredible the transformation that is possible.
Yeah.
Just by that.
Yeah.
So Tantra is actually very simple. It's a simple science.
Yeah.
That we are creating meditation out of what is already the case.
Right. And let me break that down really quick, just so people can really imagine that, right? Like this basic natural thing of men being visual.
Yes.
Right? And getting turned on by visual stimuli.
Yes.
Right? But then our culture hijacks it, and you've got porn addiction, and you've got men chasing dopamine and swipe culture, right? You've got all these shadows of this desire to see, right? And to be turned on by seeing. And for women, because we went through a few thousand years in most places in the world being told your only value is in how you look, right? And it doesn't matter how smart you are or what your heart is or how lovely you are, right? Like your only value is being seen. And if you're past a certain age, no one wants to see you, right? So then there's this whole thing in women of like, fucking get off of me. Like I want you to look at me, but like, stop it, you know? And like, I kind of want this attention, but like also it's associated with this whole shadow of dehumanization, right? And what I like to say is women actually do love being objectified when their whole humanity is seen, right? Like a work of art. Like I see the beauty of your body and I also see your intelligence and I also see your artistry and I also see the beauty of you, right? It's like, you're just a pussy. You're like, no, I see your pussy as a beautiful temple, right? And then it becomes lovely. And also women's beauty, you know, in their 60s, in their 70s, in their 80s, like we get to reprogram the story of what beauty is and how we can be seen. So what you have us do is just one small example of all the meditations, right? Is a man can be looking at the naked body of his partner, right? And if it's a woman, like I did this meditation again recently with my partner, right? He's looking at my naked body. He poses me in a certain way. And then you have us meditate. So he has to sit with everything that comes up.
Yes.
And maybe it is flashes of pornography. And maybe it is disempowering narratives. And maybe it's awe. Maybe it's like, this is a goddess. This is worshiping at the feet of the goddess. But whatever it is, it's like you purify this by meditating on it.
Through the witnessing consciousness.
Yes. And I had to sit there and be like, I don't look good. He's judging me. Oh God, you know, and then all of a sudden to like, I'm fucking hot. And like whatever comes up, right? I have to sit with it. Yes. And this, as you're saying, is the power of meditation. So instead of trying to control ourselves and be like, oh, men shouldn't be visual or like, I shouldn't want to be seen as beautiful. It's like, what does it look like when you put yourself into that and just witness whatever comes up?
Consciousness practice.
Yes.
This is the thing.
Yeah.
So whatever is you making that a consciousness practice, that's the difference that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And seeing yourself and the other in your wholeness. So that is all the aspects that we normally consider as human, and it's also all the aspects that are divine.
Yeah.
And these are meeting and merging, and that's where the magic happens. Actually, it's amazing. So I really, you know, I dedicated my life to this, to bring the facticity that bliss is possible for every human being.
Yes.
We are hardwired for bliss. There's a very beautiful book which is called Molecules of Emotion by Candace Pert, a scientist. She was studying the relationship between the emotions and the body and mind and everything. How does it all work together? And out of all her lab research, she came to a conclusion that human beings are hardwired for bliss. When everything is functioning in its flow, its natural flow as we are meant to be, we are blissful beings. And so the process of spirituality is to remember that, to come back into tune with who we are actually meant to be. And I always remember Osho answering a question where somebody said, how do I know I'm on the right path? And I remember him answering, if you are miserable, you're on the wrong path. If you are blissful, you're on the right path. Very simple criteria. So we need to tune to ourselves and find out what is that path that leads me more and more in tune with my original template of bliss. And in order to attain that, normally we need some kind of support methods. So that's where Tantra comes in, because Tantra is based on methods of meditation. And if somebody thinks it's all about sex, polyamory, orgies, that is not correct. The correct interpretation of Tantra is, it's a path to enlightenment based on methods of meditation that address every single aspect of what it is to be a human being and just bring awareness to that, which of course includes sex, but it's not only about sex.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things that I love about your body of work is you have dedicated part of your work to couples. And many people do think of Tantra as associated with polyamory or just hedonic sex. And you really teach this path of Tantra as creating soulmate couples, right? What is it to be a soulmate couple that uses the path of Tantra? Like, I know that's a whole big topic, but could you summarize a little bit of your teachings on this?
I first got inspired to develop the soulmate work because of a discourse Osho gave, where I remember him saying, Tantra is the path or the science of taking ordinary lovers and turning them into soulmates. So that discourse was so inspiring, and he said it's one of the greatest treasures that's laying there unused. And the day humanity uses it, the world will be aglow with a new love, a new light. And I felt so called in every fiber of my being, this path needs to be opened up in today's world, because the world has gone crazy basically in regards to love and relationship. You know, there's huge amount of divorce, people are in huge confusion, there's so much suffering, agony. It's crazy the amount of insanity that's going on around this subject. So I want to offer a sane path for couples to walk the spiritual path together. You can walk the spiritual path alone, definitely, but it should be known that you can also walk the spiritual path as a couple. And I always say, okay, if we want to evolve ourselves, we need to do the work on ourselves. We meditate, we do all kind of practices, we do maybe fasting or whatever it is, we go do yoga, etc. But if we want to evolve the couple has to meditate. The couple has to work on themselves. I've heard so many people say, I've done huge work on myself, but then in my couple, I'm like an infantile idiot, and I just blow up and I get into fights, and I'm just so ashamed of myself.
That was me when I met you. I mean, it's still a little bit there, but
I've done on myself. Why is it not translating into the couple? And this is a really important and valid question.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you. The work you've done on yourself is valid. It is working. But the couple is a third entity. If you want the couple to evolve, you need to do meditations in the couple. Then couple will evolve. Otherwise not. Otherwise it will be full of all the projections and childhood traumas and God knows what that bubbles up once you start relating intimately to somebody. So the Tantra for Soulmate path, it's especially for couples to walk the path of Tantra as a dedicated spiritual practice.
yeah, it's so underappreciated that you can do 100% of your own work. And I mean, I can do meditation retreats, I can be in therapy, I can go to spiritual retreats, I can sit ayahuasca, right? And that'll maybe make me 10 to 15% better as a relationship partner. Like, but just 10 to 15% better. Because I definitely knew that. I was like, the fuck? Like, I have done spiritual practice for like 10 years, 12 years. That is not a small amount of spiritual practice. I also didn't dabble. Like, I went straight to Asia. I dedicated myself. And still, I'm being a nightmare in my partnership. Like an absolute nightmare. And it took me a while to realize, oh, unless I work directly, as you're saying, on the couple, on everything that's arising in the couple, and me and my partner have to agree together. Like, we are going to work on this thing. We are going to meditate together. We are going to do spiritual practice together. We're going to do breath work together. We're going to do Sarita soulmate training together, right? All the individual work doesn't really add up that much. It's not until you work direct on it that you start seeing huge shifts and you actually start to step into spiritual relating, right? And a true tantric relating, which I can't emphasize enough, feels categorically different. Like, I was reminded of that just being in your soulmate training, right? That like couples start to shift very dramatically, doing even just a little bit of the work to this different way of vibrating. Yeah.
It is literally astonishing. Yeah. I got used to a steady diet of miracles. Like, take the couple we just had who they've been together for 20 years and they haven't had sex for, what was it?
It was a year when they came to you, like they no sex for a year. Yeah.
And then within days, they're like a honeymoon couple and completely ecstatic. So I'm just used to all these miracles happening in my groups.
Yeah.
You know.
And there was another couple that came to you that they were like on the verge of breakup and they thought it was completely over. And just like within 3 days, they went to the bottom of hell together. And then they were like, we want to have babies. You know, like really, really like deeply and profoundly in love.
Yeah, deep transformation.
Yeah.
And it's a place that it's hard for the couple just on their own to reach to if they have never done a Tantra group, for example, for couples. It's because one can't become the guru of the other one. Actually, you need a third person to tell you, okay, now you go together and you do that practice, and through that practice you're going to evolve. And then they do the practice. So they need this kind of education or a sacred holding for their container. And then once they get the knack of it, then they can really hold it on their own.
Yeah.
So that's why I developed 7 levels. By the end of the 7 levels, the couples can hold their sacred container on their own. They can themselves, they have all the tools and understanding necessary to continue on their life journey and be really empowered.
Yeah. People are like 4 years, 7 levels, right? 3.5 years, you know, and they're like, what? And you're just like, yeah, your relationship is one of the most singularly important determinants of not only your life happiness, but your family's happiness, how much you can create in the world. It matters so much. 3.5 years is nothing to put into that.
It's nothing. Yeah. And the thing is, once people do it, like they actually go through that, they want more.
Totally.
They always want more. They're like, oh my God, this is so good. And I invariably get that comment, if only I had known that when I was a teenager growing up, if only I had been told these things, if only I had these tools, I could have saved myself so much misery.
Yeah. Well, I like to say now, because I really realized this in the last couple of months, there are more people on this planet who can show you how to be enlightened by yourself than there are who can show you how to be in true spiritual tantric partnership with another. Right? There's very few teachers teaching that direct art. There's not even that many people who can show you how to just be in love basically for 20 years and be happy. But to actually be in spiritual partnership is a whole other level. And we're at this place, to me, in human consciousness where enough of us have done enough work to, because to some degree you kind of have to have done a little bit of your own work, like not always, but it really helps to then be able to even see what's possible in a couple, right? And so now I feel like enough people have done enough work for a long enough time that we're like, oh, all this work I've done on myself and all this transformation, I want to see that in my relationship. Like I want a relationship that's reflective of the spiritual power and the spiritual truth that I now know is possible inside of myself. So being able to cultivate that, I think we're just waking up to what's even possible in relating.
Yes, because basically people don't realize that this is even a possibility.
Yeah.
They've somehow been misled in all kind of directions. I look at it like that because there's no education around it.
Yeah.
How can you find out this information just about basic biology? No, you can't find it. You search. When I did my book, Divine Sexuality, I had to do so much research, reading so many boring anatomy books. Nobody's going to sit down and read all those fucking anatomy books, and just trying to find out few scraps of information. How do men and women function, and what is it all about, and what is the G-spot, and what is cervical orgasm, and what is the prostate, and how does it work, and how is it linked to my sexuality, spirituality, and it becomes very confusing. And it's further confused because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of porn, and many people, they go into sexuality thinking, oh, I just have to do like they show in porn. And then, of course, that's a disaster because that's not the way you can relate to a woman sexually. Like, it's not going to serve you at all. So it's such a mess and a confusion going on out there. And just in this last course, somebody said, I never even knew that this exists or that this is possible between two human beings. Nobody ever told me. We rely so much on our education system to provide us with answers, and those answers are nowhere. And I've looked around the world. Okay, is there anybody but me offering these kinds of answers. And in the beginning, no, there was nobody. And now, of course, it's expanded. There's many more people, and you're doing incredible work in the world. I get so many people coming to me who've been studying with you, and they're already full of brightness and luminosity, and they've evolved so much. And it's just a delight that more and more of us are doing our best.
Yeah.
You know, all we can do is do our best.
Do what you can.
Put some little few spoonfuls of honey into the sea.
Totally, totally. I would love to know more about you being a medium for Osho. And this is related to some of my experiences that I had with you, which is when I took sannyas with you, which was like in my mid to late 20s. And what happened was you channeled, what I understood, right, was as I took sannyas and basically said, look, I am going to dedicate myself even further to these practices through the Osho lineage, to awaken myself and to understand truth by being total in everything that I am, right? Like that was my dedication to sannyas. And you do this special ceremony and you wear white, and we were in Thailand, and you do actually look like everyone's dream of the fairy godmother. Like you're like, I want her to like bop me on the head. So you basically like bop me on the head or some version of that. And I just like started flying across the room. And I felt like I understood some essence of Osho because it was a simultaneous ecstasy, presence, in loveness with everything, a deep permission for whatever wanted to arise, and the cosmic joke all wrapped into one. Like it was almost like everything is holy, everything is allowed, and I'm in on the joke of the universe all at the same time.
That's Osho.
And it melted Layla's brain, right? My brain that was like, but what is the science and what is happening? And I'm not attractive enough and I'm not worthy and all the Catholic programming and the like, what do men think of me? And the like, but this is my body. And I was just like, it was literally like being on like the slip and slide of the cosmos, right? And it was just like, wow, like you could live this way, right? And so I was like, the fuck? And so anything anyone had ever said about Osho didn't matter because I tasted, right? I tasted that. And as well, like you said, you were a recipient of that transmission. You've also cultivated it through your vessel. One of the reasons I could really relate to you and resonate with you so deeply as a teacher is because you yourself had experienced abuse. You carried a deep compassion and understanding for what it was to go through trauma. You created so much safety for us in all of our practices. And you also taught me, and I saw through you so much, that even though you're this master who carries so much transmission and energy, you would rather all of us do the hard work to know the truth and power within ourselves rather than look to you as the source of anything. And having said that, one of the things you can do as a teacher is give people a taste of that source that they can then make their way back to, right? Yes. So you're like, it's very important not to turn your followers into these like energy addicts where they're coming to you, and you can give them a taste of the energy and then say, and here's what you do to find that in yourself, right? Yes. So I understand you holding it that way. And what I've loved is that some of the reason you hold some of that power is because you were a medium. Can you explain what that was? And explain about Osho's switch in the ashram, his light switch.
It's so wild and crazy. I've always loved rascal masters like Bodhidharma, like Gurdjieff, and Osho was definitively a rascal master. So at some point, he started offering what he called energy darshan. Darshan means to see. People would be coming to him to be initiated into sannyas, or they're going to leave, so he would give them blessing. And then other people were coming just to get plugged into source. So that was the energy darshan. He had a button on his chair that he could press, which would make darkness in the entire ashram. So the whole community would be plunged into darkness. Now this was further enhanced by musicians who would be playing live music, absolutely wild and crazy, chaotic music. And he had up to 30 mediums. Those were women who he had chosen especially for that role. And so the scene went something like this. And I was one of the mediums. A person would be called up to receive the energy darshan. They would come forward. Maybe there would be 2 or 3 people at a time. He would put them in a special configuration. Maybe they would have a medium holding their hand or positioned behind them. Somebody might be standing and dancing. There would be other mediums who were connecting with each other, dancing. So the lights would go off, the music would come on, the mediums would go into full body energy activation, like crazy, wild, screaming, laughing, orgasmic, full orgasmic energy with all the sounds and everything. And at the same time, Osho would be touching the third eye of the persons receiving the energy, and also touching the third eye of the mediums by turns. And it was simply a bedlam. And it was as you described, you're in a full cosmic orgasmic state. There's laughter, there's ecstasy, there's permission to be whoever you are. And basically you're getting completely plugged into source.
Yeah.
It's like a live wire plugged into source. So each darshan would last approximately 5 minutes. Then lights would come on. Usually the person who received energy, they would be completely passed out. There would be a strong person there to carry them out. And then next people would come forward. So I was one of his mediums receiving that blasting every night. Oh my God. So I was basically having full cosmic orgasm every night. And for those who have some kind of misunderstanding about that, it's not that he was sexually touching anybody. It was all with the third eye. But that, that touch from the master on the third eye, it pulls your energy inward and upward.
Yeah.
So it is fully orgasmic, but there's no such thing as genital release happening. It's your full body activation plugged to source. So that's why I call it cosmic orgasm.
Yes.
And one can never forget that. Once that has been tasted, it never goes away. It's eternally there inside. So that being plugged directly into source through being his medium, it continues. It's always there as an undercurrent, even though I'm not always like this, but it's always there inside of me. Yeah. I'm a glass of champagne who's always bubbling and in that state. It forever transformed me.
Yes, and we were designed to be that way.
Yes.
To be to hold the waves of that aliveness within us.
Yes.
One of the things I've loved about Osho is the 0 fucks given. My partner just sat with the holder of the Vajrayana lineages from Tibet, like this great Tibetan master in his 80s. And essentially he was like, the reason more people aren't enlightened is because they give too much of a fuck, right? And you look at Osho like giving like CNN interviews in like the 1980s, and he's wearing like spacesuits, and he's like swearing, and he's doing all this rascal stuff, as you're saying. I think it's so important for us to remember that path is possible, that enlightenment doesn't have to be through just control and just rigidity and just seriousness. It can certainly be about discipline and devotion and dedication and doing the work and doing the healing, but it doesn't have to be so serious. And there are masters who remind us of that by giving less fucks. And so it kind of bursts our let me clutch my spiritual pearls, and it really opens our eyes. And Shashi, one of our mutual friends and a teacher, I always loved that she used to say, in any spiritual tradition, there's a good chunk of people who are just missing the point, right? There's like a little chunk of people who are getting it and a good chunk of people missing the point. She's like, at least the Osho sannyasins who are missing the point are having a great time, like enjoying themselves. So thank you so much. It's been so beautiful.
I feel like we could go on and on for hours. Actually.
That's why we'll have you back. It's also why I always tell people to study with you. So I'd love for you to tell people where they can work with you more. You truly are one of my top answers when people say, where can I go to learn Tantra? Because what you teach is so accessible. Your mastery is so deep, so true, and so real. And I can truly trust from the bottom of my heart what someone will experience in your space. In fact, just this last week, so many of my friends came to you, and it was like such a delight to feel them revel in your mastery and to be so grateful for everything that you created by starting so young, dedicating yourself for so long. They can feel that and they're so grateful, and that means the world to me. So how can others study with you?
Thank you. Well, basically you can find me on Instagram, Ma Ananda Sarita, on Facebook, of course, and my website is anandasarita.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter. You can read my books. I have online courses also, which you can find through my website.
Yeah.
And I have live courses. I teach all year long, almost all the time, almost non-stop. So I have teacher training, also Goddess Essence teacher training, Tantra Yoga teacher training, and the Soulmate training, and numerous other groups. I also teach the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, which is the 112 methods coming from that very ancient scripture. And this is a very special and I would say rare opportunity to really dive into those very precious methods. So basically I'm all switched on. I'm a walking mystery school. Just go for it. Join and enjoy your life. Find your template of bliss.
I did your 2-year teacher training, your soulmate up to level 5. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to get to level 10. I know level 10 doesn't exist yet, but we're going to get there.
We'll make one just for you.
Yay! And your Vignan Bhairav Tantra, and I recommend them so highly. So wonderful. So everyone go check out Sarita. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you for listening to this Tantric Life. I am Layla Martin. This is the home for the realest conversations about sex, spirituality, polarity, conscious relationships, and all kinds of topics that help us live the absolute most incredible lives. Please check out the next episode. Please go ahead and leave your rating and review on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. It's so helpful when you do that. If you want to stay connected to me, the most helpful supportive thing you can do is to head over to laylamartin.com, sign up with your email address. That connects you to me if you want to study deeper with me, if you want to receive my deeper teachings. I do it predominantly via email. Finally, you can check me out on Instagram at @the Layla Martin. And thank you so much for being here.